In 2020, the governing body provided no advance notice of the COVID-19 pandemic. Elders were left scrambling on how to handle their congregations. Even as late as the March 2020 announcements, the memorial is referenced, completely oblivious that the world was already shutting down around them. If you were a witness at that time, you'll remember some congregations preemptively stopping meetings thanks to alert elders watching the news, while other congregations were carrying on as normal. It was chaos, and definitely not united. Every congregation was doing something different. Some brothers with technical know-how started setting up streams for their congregations. Meanwhile, others sat on their hands and told members to just watch JW broadcasting programs until further direction was received. Some Jehovah's Witnesses refused to go to the public meetings in order to keep their families safe. During all of this, the governing body was purely reactive, not proactive. They started shutting down meetings and circuit assemblies only after government restrictions forced them to, as this article from jw.org shows. Do you want to know how arrogant the organization was at the start of the pandemic? Here's what Anthony Morris, a member of the governing body, said during the 148th class of the Watchtower Bible School of Gilead, which was held on March 14th, 2020.
I've been telling them for some time now, cheer up, it's going to get worse. And so we keep a sense of humor with it, but that's a fact. What we're experiencing right now in this global pandemic, I was telling the branch class yesterday, it doesn't bother me. We've been waiting for this. We knew things like this were going to happen. Christ Jesus has prepared us. Where's the shock?
Again, notice the date. This was on March 14th. And they restricted audiences. In harmony with the recommendations from authorities, one of these recommendations was to limit large gatherings. Considering this and other factors, the governing body directed that there would be no outside guests for the program. So the governing body didn't want any outside guests when they were in attendance, but 2 days later they sent out this letter encouraging regular weekly congregation meetings in person. By that time, all the major sports leagues in the US had already shut down. Corporations were allowing their employees to work remotely, and still, the governing body was encouraging in-person meetings, and only if secular authorities hadn't yet restricted gathering sizes.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Stephen Lett, another governing body member, was giddy. The pandemic was surely the start of the end.
Just a few months ago, most of us had probably never even heard the word coronavirus. Now the words coronavirus and COVID-19 have become an all too familiar part of our vocabulary. With the world facing this pandemic, everyday life for many of us has been disrupted in ways we might never have imagined. And sad to say, in just a short time, this disease has taken the lives of thousands. But we're really not surprised to see the world in the grip of such pestilence, are we? Jesus made it clear at Luke 21:11 that pestilence would be part of the sign of the last days. And in Revelation chapter 6, the ride of the fourth horseman includes mention of deadly plague. So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
It wasn't until after June 2020 that they provided the elders a new document entitled Direction Related to COVID-19 Pandemic for Bodies of Elders. That was well into the pandemic, and they had the audacity to come out with this revisionist piece of history last month in their Watchtower study. As though Jehovah's Witnesses have the memory of a goldfish. Jesus provides wise direction in times of crisis. The benefits of that direction were evident when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. While many in the world were uncertain about what course to take, Jesus made sure that we received clear guidance to keep us safe. We were encouraged to wear face coverings when out in public and to practice physical distancing. The elders were reminded to maintain regular contact with all in the congregation and to be aware of their physical and spiritual needs. We received additional direction and encouragement by means of governing body updates. During the pandemic, we also received clear direction about how to hold congregation meetings and engage in the preaching work. Almost overnight, we began attending Christian meetings, assemblies, and conventions by means of video conferencing tools. We also began witnessing almost entirely by letter and telephone. Jehovah blessed our efforts. Many branches have reported notable increases in the number of publishers. In fact, many have had encouraging experiences during this time. Even the most staunch apologist cannot in any honesty say that these two paragraphs aren't anything but flat-out lies. The governing body simply parroted whatever the CDC stated, and later, the Watchtower organization waited on guidance from the world, and in many cases only acted after governments imposed restrictions. The organization was flying blind, and they had the hubris to pat themselves on the back for their ill-prepared response to the pandemic. But then for 2 years, being a JW was easy as pie, especially for PMOs. For field ministry, all they had to do was write letters, and for meetings, just log into Zoom with their cameras off. It was nice, peaceful. Bethel was in complete lockdown, likely aware that obesity was a huge risk factor for severe COVID-19. But much to the chagrin of PMOs and PMEs alike, in March it was announced in-person meetings would be back beginning April 1st. The news was posted on jw.org in the form of breaking news, but it was taken down again soon after. Some JWs thought that announcement was fake when they were told about it, but sadly, elders later received a letter stating that in-person meetings would be resuming, along with instructions of signs to be posted. Elders were once again scrambling to get the Kingdom Hall ready. They were only given about 2 weeks. Notice number 6 from the March 12th announcement. Personal choices regarding vaccination and whether to attend in person should be respected. We'll come back to that. Of course, after 2 years of Zoom watching, many opted to continue watching the meetings from home. Why wouldn't they? No more having to rush from work, feed the family, get dressed, only to be judged at the hall by others. Zoom with the camera off was, forgive the expression, a godsend. At this time, masks were encouraged. We all know when the governing body says something is encouraged, you have to do it. Otherwise, you'll be talked to by the elders and judged by others. Encouraged is one of those JW cult terms that means something different to someone who isn't aware of the lingo. In the March 19th announcements, masks are now strongly encouraged. Notice this section of the coordinators of the bodies of elders. They encourage elders to remain up to date with local government regulations. The elders need to look out for themselves because apparently Bethel was too busy making videos about donating money. Then there were a couple puff pieces on jw.org about how happy everyone is to be back in person. I know that wasn't the case for many witnesses. Of course, the push to go back had nothing to do with health precautions and everything to do with opening up before the memorial again. I wonder if they had realized they were losing control of the members. Not having a constant flow of in-person indoctrination during the pandemic allowed many to wake up. Then it was announced that the public ministry, everything except for door-to-door, would be resuming.
On May 31st, 2022, the governing body informed all branch committees that we would now resume all forms of our public ministry, except house-to-house work. Around the world, our brothers and sisters were thrilled to resume public witnessing. After resuming in-person preaching, one sister said, "It was like we were resurrected. We were gone, and then we were back. It was unifying." And the brother said, "It was like riding a bicycle. It all came back quickly, and we had a great time." A member of the branch committee in the United States was working with a small group making return visits that they hadn't made in person since before the pandemic. He said, "I was worried that people would be standoffish or that they'd be worried about the virus, but that just wasn't the case at all."
On June 2nd, 2022, elders in the U.S. were informed that location-specific direction regarding COVID-19 would no longer be provided, and they were directed to go to the CDC website for information instead. What happened to Jesus supposedly leading the organization while the world was in shambles? Just more lies. Again, notice this sentence. Since each publisher's circumstances may vary, no one should feel pressure to participate in any specific method of preaching. In this June letter, it shows that Bethel facilities in most cases were still in lockdown. Yes, while members were told to meet in person in kingdom halls and preach in public, the governing body was still tucked safely inside. Meanwhile, they are still lovingly recommending that everyone at the kingdom hall wear a mask. At the end of July, congregations received this letter, attending in-person meetings. In reviewing the results of resuming in-person congregation meetings since April 1st, 2022, it is evident that Jehovah is clearly blessing this arrangement. We thank Jehovah for the opportunity to greet our brothers and sisters face-to-face, sing songs of praise to Jehovah harmoniously, and make other appropriate expressions of Christian affection once again. How is it evident that Jehovah is clearly blessing this arrangement? Seriously, what evidence of a blessing was there? The governing body told them to go back, and so they did. It's just empty words without substance. The next couple paragraphs actually paint a completely different picture of what was happening, that witnesses wanted to stay on Zoom. After more than 2 years of not being able to meet together at our kingdom halls, we have renewed appreciation for in-person Christian meetings that lift our spirits and strengthen our faith during these difficult times. We acknowledge that because of advanced age, infirmities, or other circumstances, some may be limited in their ability to attend meetings in person. For such ones, please keep in mind the loving reminder at Hebrews 6 verse 10. God is not unrighteous so as to forget your work and the love you showed for his name, by ministering and continuing to minister to the holy ones. On the other hand, some brothers and sisters, younger and in good health, have more favorable circumstances that may allow them to attend Christian meetings regularly at the Kingdom Hall. However, it has been observed that some have developed a tendency to attend meetings on a video conference when, according to their circumstances, they could be physically at the Kingdom Hall. If this is our situation, we can ask ourselves the soul-searching question, can I put forth greater effort to worship Jehovah in person? Remember when they first opened Kingdom Halls and they said people's decision should be respected? Well, not anymore. They want butts in those seats, money in those contribution boxes. Oh, but meanwhile, Bethel was still closed to visitors and guests because they felt it was still unsafe. In August, the last bombshell drop that so many witnesses were dreading, door to door, was to resume again in September, just in time for the new service year. What a coincidence.
It's also exciting that we'll return to the house-to-house ministry starting September 1st, just in time for our worldwide campaign to start Bible studies. And I'm sure the angels are going to be excited too, because it'll give them opportunities to help us with our ministry. It's been so refreshing, hasn't it, to resume more and more of our theocratic activities in person? We're grateful for the good direction Jehovah is providing. It strengthens our faith in him and our confidence in his organization. What a contrast with the world. People today are suffering from a crisis of confidence. They have doubts about whether the people they look up to, politicians, scientists, businessmen, really have their best interests at heart. They wonder, do they really care about me, or are they just out for themselves? What about the clergy of Christendom? Many have lost respect for them too. So it's not surprising that they're skeptical about the book the clergy claim to represent, the Bible.
And all elder meetings were to be conducted in person. And still, Bethel was closed to visitors and guests. Many witnesses were sick with anxiety. For 2 years they were able to write letters in the comfort of their home, but now they had to go out in service again. I felt so sorry for them. Oh, and remember how vaccinations were a personal choice? Well, not anymore for any members of the hospital liaison committee. If they want to stay on the HLC, they have to be vaccinated now. I'm going to interject something here. I don't want to read any debates about masks or vaccines in the comments. I will just delete them. This video is to highlight the hypocrisy of the governing body who care about their own health while risking the lives of every other member, about how the governing body says matters such as in-person attendance, type of ministry, vaccination status, and masks are a personal choice, but then changed their stance a few months later. And sure enough, the next month it was announced that masks were no longer strongly recommended beginning October 1st. Again, we all know that strongly recommended meant required. And still, as of the date of this video, October 23rd, 2022, Bethel is still not open for tours. That's over 6 months since they made witnesses go back to in-person meetings. Why the double standard? Is the governing body more important than you just because they had a feeling they're anointed? Don't they trust Jehovah and Jesus to protect their only spokesman on earth during the last days? I hope you understand the message the governing body is sending out loud and clear. Your health doesn't matter. Only their health matters. And now they are trying to push witnesses off of Zoom and into in-person meetings. Meanwhile, the governing body enjoy their safe space without risk of contamination. They don't have to go out for work. They don't have to pick up kids from daycare or school. They aren't forced to go grocery shopping for themselves. They get a cushy, carefree life in a secluded lake residence, while the rest of the members risk their very lives. They have stated several times that Jehovah's Witnesses must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not. Why would you risk your life for a group of men that have specifically stated they are uninspired and not infallible? Does that make sense? Is that fair? Does that sound like the governing body are acting like the so-called slave class? Or are they more like the Pharisees whom Jesus accused of not even lifting a finger? Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate the support. I'm also on Buy Me a Coffee now. Link is in the description below. Thanks and see you in the next video.